How do you get your baby on a feeding schedule when you go back to work? You don't really. There's not necessarily going to be a schedule. You're always going to want to feed your baby on demand, meaning you feed them when they're telling you that they're hungry. However, you are going back to work and you are going to be pumping. Maybe you have more so a pump schedule and you're wondering, how often are you going to pump? How much should you be pumping? What I would recommend is doing a practice session. So before you go back to work, maybe 1 to 2 weeks before then, have a couple days where you pump and bottle feed about the same hours that you would be gone and away from work. That way you can practice pumping and kind of get the hang of it, but that way you also know how much your baby is taking in a bottle. You should feed your baby a bottle, family members should feed your baby a bottle. Make sure that you know how much you're taking. That way when you send them off to daycare, they're not overfeeding your baby. So you are gonna do this practice and maybe you find that your baby eats about 2.5 ounces every 2 hours. Sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a little bit less. They will almost never take the same exact amount of milk at the breast, so I wouldn't expect them to take the same exact amount of milk when they're getting a bottle. But that gives you a great start. That way when you go back to work, you know that you need about 2.5 ounces for every 2 hours. You could even play it safe by getting 3 ounces every 2 hours. And then once you actually do go back to work, you're gonna start to find your rhythm. You'll figure out what's working for you, what's easier. So it's definitely not something to get too hung up upon. So it's definitely not something that you need to be super stressed about.